Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kacho Shadja. I'm a member of the State Assembly representing the 35th District, that's the entire county of San Luis Obispo and northern Santa Barbara County, all the way to Lompoc. I'm a graduate of Cuesta College and later on Cal Poly. Upon graduation, I had to work at a gas station too much with college, so I ended up buying it to stay local, and from there I'm doing the business work. Now, as we speak, I've been in business, self-employed for 38 years, and I still have my businesses. Politics, I got into County Board of Supervisors. I served that for 3 terms. Kind of worked out when I got in, but at the time I left, we had $80 million in reserves. We all worked very well together, Democrats and Republicans. Later on, the opportunity came that I ran for State Assembly, and the times were very tough. We were $26 billion in deficit. I'm happy to stand here and say it's credit to all of us that work together. We don't have that deficit. And at the end of my term, which will be the end of my 3rd term, will be lower debt, no deficit, and money, and over $8 billion in savings. My time is up. I'll be happy to answer your questions as we move forward. Thank you.
For being here. I want to thank Lobby Corps for putting this on, and this is very exciting. It's the first time really in 20 years that voters in the 24th Congressional District can make a decision on who their next representative is going to be. And I hope I can earn your vote in that area. I'm very happy and very proud to be the mayor of Santa Barbara. I'm in my 2nd term, and I served on the city council before that. And I'm running for Congress because I want to take that perspective of being a mayor who I've worked with other mayors around the country to fight the gridlock to get things done in Washington, D.C. We know that there are ways to work together, and I've done so as mayor, setting a tone with a very politically diverse city council on getting things done, mostly on an unanimous basis in very many occasions. I'm also not a yes man. I'm not someone who will just do what's being told by others, so that I won't just vote for something just because someone tells me to go in a certain way. I will do my homework, I will focus on the issues of the 24th Congressional District, and then speak out on the issues that I know are of best concern to you, and speak out even when it is not the most politically expedient thing to do, but it's the right thing to do for the voters of the 24th Congressional District. I hope that means that we can help people live up to their full potential. I think there's a role in the federal government where it means it's help for educational opportunities, for job opportunities, so that when you go to work, you're not harassed or discriminated against or feel retaliated for making decisions that are good for you and your family. And I want to be that strong voice and that strong vote for you, and I hope I can earn your support. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Justin Fareed. I was born and raised right here in Santa Barbara. 3rd generation rancher on my mother's side. My father is a U.S. Army veteran and a doctor who uses medical expertise to create devices that treat repetitive stress injuries. As a kid, I grew up packing boxes, taking inventory, taking product orders for our company. I've grown up building this business with my family. I'm now vice president of this business. I went to UCLA. I'm a Bruin. Please don't hold it against me. It was my dream as a kid to play football at UCLA. I had the opportunity to walk on there, and after 4 knee surgeries, I finally had an opportunity to make it to the field, so I felt blessed for that opportunity. A few years ago, I worked for a senior member of Congress. I worked on a number of different issues. I fought to bring consensus among members and to move policy for the benefit of all of us. But what I found and what I saw is exactly what so many of you are concerned about: the dysfunction, the empty rhetoric, the tendency for political insiders to be more concerned about their next election than they are the next generation. I got so fed up with the dysfunction, I ended up resigning right at the government shutdown. But I realized this, that if you don't get involved with the government you have, you're going to get the government you deserve. I think it's necessary that we all take an interest in our government and we work to improve the direction that we're heading in as a country for all of us and for the future of our country. And I look forward to continuing the discussion through the course of tonight's debate. Thank you all for being here.
Good evening.
This is 2 minutes. So for our first uniform question, why should a UCSB student vote for you specifically, and how will you represent their best interests in DC? Dr. Isaacson, I'll start with you.
College, later on, I pull up my children to go through college. I feel your pain. We need to make universities more affordable and accessible. More accessible, we have to help universities have more facilities to have more students be able to take your classes on a timely manner in order for you to graduate on a timely manner. According to Forbes magazine, 1.2 trillion debt per student is about $33,000. Not acceptable. We need to make loans available to you at any time with no interest and give you a year break right after graduation so you have time to find a job and go through the expenses to settle down and get hold of it. And after that, start paying your debt. It's no-brainer. We have a savings account that's 5 to 9 just for college. We need to improve on that. We need to make that tax deductible so your parents and grandparents can put in money before taxes. And then if you're able to use it, fine. If you don't need all of the money, you can have your siblings draw on it, and if your siblings are out of college and there is excess money, you'll be able to donate it to any college that has scholarships and don't have to pay any taxes on that. So we need to pay attention because you are the future. You are 1/3 of our population, but all of our future. We need to take care of you. The better you do, the better for us, for the country. Thank you.
So as I said in my opening statement, I believe there's a role in the federal government to help people reach their full potential. So why should you vote for me as a gaucho? Well, first off, to reach your full potential while you're still here on campus is to enable you to get access to funding for the tuition and books and other expenses that come about when you are here in class. To make sure that you feel safe on campus and that the epidemic of sexual violence and assault that happens on campuses throughout the country is taken away, and people who have violated those rules and those laws are held accountable on a national level. As mayor, I've been very proud to be able to give federal funding of our general fund services to the Rape Crisis Center and Domestic Violence Solutions. Where you put your money is where you put your priorities, and those are things on a federal government level we have to focus on. We need to make sure that gun violence safety legislation happens on a national level. We're having great success here in the state of California, but basically you go across the state line and the rules don't necessarily apply. That needs to be done on a national level. I've been working for 15 to 20 years on that issue. When you get out of school, you want to be able, when you graduate, be able to have opportunities right here on the Central Coast, should you choose to stay here, or wherever it may be, where you feel like you can work in a place where you're not being retaliated against or discriminated because of your sexual orientation or your gender, and that your pay is equitable no matter what your gender is, that we have pay equity throughout the country. That your health care is something that's accessible to you, both in terms of the cost, out-of-pocket cost, and that the assault on Planned Parenthood and other issues related to reproductive health care is secured no matter where you are in this country. And then finally, looking at funding available for research and development and other types of entrepreneurial activity that we see so well here on the Central Coast, to provide those opportunities, working with local governments, working with universities on creating opportunities here so we can have great economic development that's also environmentally sound.
Time.
This election is not about choosing between a Democrat or a Republican. This is about a vision that's going to move us forward in a positive direction, or the status quo that's going to work to the detriment of the direction that we're heading in. Congress is not a functional institution. I think a lot of people recognize that the dysfunction is actually working against all people in the future of our country. There's an increasing rise in debt. If we look at the future of this country, we're going to continue to pay higher taxes, we're going to have fewer jobs, and we're going to have more debt on top of us. I don't believe that there is a voice that represents the future in Congress. We are the most underrepresented body in the United States. Between Democrats and Republicans, there isn't one member of Congress under the age of 30 that could represent our interests. I think we need to not have the federal government charging interest and profiteering on loans that are offered to students. I believe that we need to have a system that modernizes and expands 529 savings accounts so that parents and kids can invest and save and have options once they graduate from high school on where they would like to invest in their future, whether it's vocational, technical education, or whether they have an opportunity to transfer that and invest in a startup and pay an income tax on that. We need options moving forward to compete in the 21st century workforce and make sure that we have a modernized government that is mobile and up to date with the times and with the circumstances that we all have as Americans and we have as the future of our nation. Thank you.
Has been serving in your seat since 2003. Can you please name one decision that you supported that she made and one decision that you would have changed if you were in her position?
Thank you. I think one of the problems that we're seeing in Congress today is the partisan politics that's really dividing either side. When I was working in Washington, D.C., I saw that there was a lot of empty rhetoric. When you would go to different hearings or debates, you would find that there was only one or two people in those rooms. There wasn't an actual facility to have that discourse, discuss the problems that we face. Congress isn't working. I believe that we need to reform the institution and get it working again for the American people. When we think about the problems that we face both today and tomorrow, they're long range in nature, and the only way that we're going to improve that is by reforming Congress. We got to have a budget structure. I mean, that's one of Congress's main basic responsibilities, is to have oversight and management and see where the money is actually being spent. Taxpayer dollars are actually being spent. That's where the conversation, the debate is supposed to happen. But what we see so much today with political insiders and career politicians is that they're more focused on their next election than they are the next generation and the policies that affect all of us. So as a candidate to represent all of you and the future of our country, I think it's necessary that we address this systemically, not look at it from a partisan perspective, but all as Americans, what can we do to improve Congress and get it working again? This is where our voice is best heard. This is where the representative democracy actually is in place. I saw some students with a student for Bernie sign. I think that's great that you're getting engaged in the political process, but our voice is best heard in Congress. That's where we make the most legitimate reform, and where we could get the American people working again is through Congress. So that's my goal, my objective in this race.
So I've known the Congresswoman for a long time. We obviously have a lot of the same background, work being here in Santa Barbara, and obviously I've appreciated her work dealing with healthcare in particular. I was particularly pleased and surprised of her courageous vote when it mattered in voting against the Iraq War, and back in the early 2000s, and that to me showed a sign of courage, and because it was not the easy thing to do, but it was the right thing to do. At the same time, I was fast forward many years, I was very surprised that she very instantly said yes to the Iran deal. It became such a partisan issue that if you were a Democrat, you were expected to vote yes on the Iran deal, and if you were a Republican, you were expected to vote no on the Iran deal. I think that deal came about in such a way that it's actually losing our leverage in the Middle East and on foreign policy, and I was very concerned about it, but to have that instant support troubled me greatly. And so as your next congressperson, I think this is going to be a big issue, especially as a Democrat going into Congress, to mend the fences that we have seen between the U.S. and Israel. It should not be a partisan issue. It needs to be something that we address in a very strong ally in the Middle East, and we need to make absolutely sure that the deal that is now in place, that it states that everyone is accountable, and that there are consequences if someone should violate the deal on all sides.
Regardless of our differences between her and I want to take a moment and thank her for all the years that she served us. Among her services, she did take up some of the health issues, not to get in details, and some veterans issues as well, where she and I were able to work together as a county supervisor. I served on SLOCOG, which is the Council of Governments, and she was with her to bring us a little more money to improve the infrastructure. mainly Santa Maria Bridge was able to bring us $5 million to put it towards the study. So I'm thankful for that. Since the issue of Iran came up, I was very disappointed, not just in her, but everybody who supported that. To say that we had a deal, there was no deal. From day one, we should have put a stop to their progress before we start negotiating. And to say that an inspector has to give warning 24 days ahead of time, come on, give me a break. Just think that if your sheriff was to go to a drug bust, but have to tell them, give them warning 24 days ahead of time, guess what will happen to the evidence? That was no deal. So I'd be happy to talk more about it, more in details, as I've done in the past. But overall, let me just be the kind person and say thank you for years of services for us.
Some of them for Fabian. During your campaign, you would propose passing a balanced budget amendment as a way of addressing the national debt. What would you explicitly define as a balanced budget within that amendment, and how would you plan to pass such an amendment?
If you look at my record for the last 3 terms as the member of County Board of Supervisors, we work well together to pass a balanced budget. Balanced budget means you don't spend more than what's coming in to make it simple. Look at my record on the Assembly. For almost three terms now, this is what the end of this year will be the end of my 3 terms. We work very closely with our colleagues to pass a balanced budget, and every time the majority failed to do so, we went back to the negotiations, and we were able to do so, pass a balanced budget. California, just like 40 other states, the Constitution requires that we have a balanced budget on a given time. I think the same should apply to the federal government. That does not apply for the time being. We need to do that. And we need also to have, just like we have at the Assembly now in the state, when you don't pass a balanced budget on time, you don't get paid. So from congressional folks and senators, we don't pass a balanced budget, we don't get paid. Now what they do, they put the money in escrow so that later on, when you pass a balanced budget, you take the money back. But what I'm saying that no escrow, no money. When you're done, you don't have it, you don't pass a balanced budget, you don't get paid, period. Now, it's easier said than done. We have almost $19 trillion in deficit. We need to. The problem is not the source of revenue. Our federal government receives over $200 billion a month in revenues. It's the attitude we have as how we spend the money, where we spend the money. And that needs to be taken care of. Take care of fraud and abuse of the money. We'll have enough to take care of the deficit and balance the budget on a timely manner. Trade comes into the picture. We need to make America more competitive with the rest of the industrial nations. It's not fair that we have all the regulations from the global warming to wages, and we have trade with other countries that don't have none of that. Just for example, since we're rich in agriculture, we have NAFTA in place. We can bring strawberries from any borders and sell in California less than our farmers can afford to, because they don't have the wage issues, they don't have the spraying, when they spray, how they spray, what they spray, but our farmers are very much regulated, and it costs more money to produce their products, and then they cannot compete with the rest of the world. And so it's not fair. We need to make America more competitive. We need to bring everybody to the table to be sure that we take care of our own first. Thank you.
Next question is for Mayor Schneider. So, Mayor Schneider, on your campaign website, it states that you stand against establishment politics and that you stand for grassroots, issue-driven campaigns. How do you feel that you've demonstrated this as the mayor of Santa Barbara, and how do you plan to do so if you're elected?
Thank you for the question. This campaign has been really an eye-opening and amazing experience, going all around the 24th Congressional District, meeting with community groups and community leaders. And as mayor, you get to go to a lot of different places, and I really appreciate being able to talk to really not the usual suspects, but people who care about the community as well, on top of people who are connected to community organizations. Just today, before coming here to the debate, I hosted the thing I do quarterly, Art in the Mayor's Office, where I had Santa Barbara High School students and their parents come who had artwork in my office through First Thursday as part of showcasing both City Hall and art. I think there's a way to connect with community groups, with grassroots organizations, whether you're an organized group or whether you're a group that cares about a particular issue. It could be gun violence prevention, it could be affordable housing, it could be issues related to pay equity or marriage equality, or issues related to environmental protection. I want to be the person who is connecting with the local governments, and I've done so through the League of California Cities, and figuring out what is that connection that can help bring City Hall and Capitol Hill closer together. How can I, as a representative, as your representative, help cut through that red tape to get through the morass of bureaucracy that you see in DC to get things done here? I work with other mayors throughout the country through the U.S. Conference of Mayors on issues related to hunger and homelessness, to environmental protection, and we find, talking to a variety of different organizations and a variety of different groups, what the best practices are and how to bring those best practices into reality, and that's the kind of attention I'd like to bring as your representative.
So just as a reminder, we have 3 minutes to answer these questions. And the next question is from Mr. Ostrander. Key aspect of your platform is tackling student debt by creating a national service program. What would this program require of participants, and how would you implement it?
Students when they're going into college. A lot of you have ideas about what you want to do, but what experience do you have to really come to that decision? I think being part of a community project, being part of some sort of a civil service program, exposes you to things that you wouldn't ordinarily find just going to class. You might find that instead of being that hedge fund manager, but you know what? You really enjoy working with kids. And I can tell you firsthand, having worked with a young man now for 35 years, I made a difference in his life. I'm the only family this young man has. We are lucky. We are gifted. We have gotten everything we need for the most part. It's time that you share that with one another. It's time that you look for compassion with your community. Showing some of that compassion is a healthy thing. And for that, we combine the AmeriCorps, the Peace Corps, and some of the other organizations that we already have in place right now, including the military. We would actually use those organizations together to fund a national civil service program like so many other countries in the world have. It's an investment in your communities, people. I think it's an important thing that we could all do. And boy, wouldn't we be better off for it. Thank you.
Next question is for you, Mr. Freed. So on your campaign website, you state that the federal government is pushing one-size-fits-all programs into coastal universities. Could you clarify that and explain how your proposed plan would affect the lives of students at universities here?
Sure. Well, I think what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. is a one-size-fits-all bureaucracy from Washington. When we hear from the mayor and supervisors and people at all different levels, it's often recognized that the best management is done at the local level, and that's where you'll actually be able to get the best execution. I talked about earlier, when we're talking about competing in the 21st century workforce, the top priority is to get the economy working again and create an environment where job creators could actually employ people so that you have an opportunity to get a job once you graduate from school. Focusing on the 529 tax savings accounts is another option that helps provide more options once you graduate from high school. This is a program that allows you to invest and save and have your parents invest and save through the course of your life so that once you graduate from high school without being taxed on it, you have options on how you're going to invest that money in whatever kind of education you want. That helps to better identify whether you want to go to a community college or focus on vocational education or technical education when you graduate. Whatever best fits you and provides options for you moving forward. I want to touch on some issues. The supervisor mentioned some buzzwords about being bipartisan, but in the earlier question, he mentioned the Iran deal. I think this was one of the most partisan issues that we've seen with empty rhetoric on either side, and I would say that the Congresswoman was one of 10 people, or a handful of people, that actually boycotted hearing the Prime Minister of Israel come talk about the potential implications of passing such a deal. Not only that, but she was one of the first to hop on support of this Iran deal without evaluating it. So when we're talking about an incredibly unstable, destabilized region that's very volatile today, and we talk about the potential of nuclear arms getting into the hands of different players throughout that region and what that looks like for our future here on the Central Coast and the rest of the world, I'm just very curious what it was within that deal that you supported, and given that you say you're bipartisan, how could one make that kind of observation and come to that conclusion without having done the due diligence in what actually exists within it?
Yes, you're
20 seconds. I think for starters, you need to understand that I would have attended the Prime Minister of Israel's participation at the House of Representatives. I would have attended that. It doesn't take away from the fact that I do support the Iran deal that was breached. It's not based on trust, it's based on verification. It's based on reducing the ability of Iran getting their hands on developing a nuclear weapon. That's the bottom line. And really avoiding a war, sending our troops, putting our men and women in the military in peril for not exhausting diplomacy.
Thank you. Thank you. Where's that open?
The next question is for you, Carvajal. Supervisor Carvajal, you have a significant number of Democratic endorsements, such as Lois Capps to Nancy Pelosi. Given the current polarized political climate in Congress, how do you think this will affect your ability to reach across the aisle to pass legislation?
You know, I need to look no further than my service on the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors. Let me share with you some of the things we've done in a bipartisan fashion. We have the highest rainy day reserve that Santa Barbara County government has ever had in a bipartisan fashion. We have the highest bond credit rating in the state of California than any other county in the state of California. We've balanced our budget each and every year in a bipartisan way. We provided health insurance to children in our county. We had 16,000 uninsured children. Before the Affordable Care Act came into place, we reduced that to 1,500. We passed an investment in our infrastructure in a bipartisan fashion, $100 million over the next 10 years. We passed a truancy program that brought down over 4,000 truant children to less than 25 needing an intervention. Those are the types of things we've done in a bipartisan fashion here on the County Board of Supervisors. And I hope to be able to do the same thing in Congress, to work with anyone who's willing to work with me to solve the problems that will bring about solutions to the many challenges that working and middle-class families have on the Central Coast and throughout our country, whether it's improving our education system, reforming student loans so that students don't have to get high interest loans for their education, whether it's passing family leave, passing minimum wage, increasing minimum wage, whether it's investing in our infrastructure. All of those issues are issues that don't have to be partisan. They could be bipartisan like we've done on the Santa Barbara County Board of Supervisors. And I'm very proud of that.
Just a quick notice before we move on to the last question. Last two questions, my apologies. I've been alerted that the poll questions only support 160 characters due to some technical restraints, so please keep your questions concise. So the next question is to Dr. Isaacson. So a large portion of your campaign addresses
These a significant portion of your platform is dedicated to reducing student loan debt. However, what other key issues do you plan to address given that Congress operates on a national level dealing with both foreign and domestic issues?
Well, I worked up there for 10 years as a senior legislative.
Okay, as we prepare the questions that have been submitted to us, we'd like to just have a 2-minute break so that the candidates can get some water and anyone who wants to can get some food that we've set up there. So it's 8:09 now, we'll be back at about 8:12. Asking the questions that you as the audience submitted. We received more than 80 questions, which is really exciting. So we have categorized them based on quantity of question asked. You know, sometimes more than one person sent roughly the same question. So to the candidates, the questions will be general questions. For the first question, we'll be starting with Mr. Isaacson and going down. You have 2 minutes to answer the question, and it's requested that everyone try to project their voice as much as possible because apparently there's a little bit of trouble hearing in the very back. So, all right. So, Mr. Isaacson, the very first question here is, what are your feelings about the American Affordable Care Act, and how would you approve or change it if you were elected?
In general,
You have to do it in a way that works with the whole act.
When the President of the United States came on public TV and told us that if you like what you have, you can keep it, but that wasn't the case. Obviously, there was something wrong with it. Affordable health care offered everything and anything to everyone, but providers weren't available to serve those needs. That's another problem. If you want to have affordable health care, remove some of the regulations from insurance companies so they can readily do business in California. Allow us to reach out of state and see who has the best deal for us. Every time you turn the TV on, you see car insurance companies comparing prices. You never see healthcare insurance companies doing that. Bring competition to the table and let us make that decision as to what's best for us. Also allow us, as a small business person as I am, to buy insurance prior to my tax money. That will help and encourage businesses to do so. I'm limited now to buy another business because my number of employees will go over 50. Won't allow, it will become a very expensive operation. This healthcare tied my hands down for something I really enjoy to do, grow my businesses. I went from 1 location to 3 locations, from 6 employees to 30 employees. I want to be able to grow in the market that I am in because of what ties my hands, what makes it more expensive to operate. So that's where I stand on this issue.
The Affordable Care Act has done some really extraordinary things in our country. Millions of people now have insurance. We no longer can exclude people from having pre-existing illnesses. Younger people can stay on their parents' insurance up to 25. A lot of good things came about as a result of the health insurance that we now know as the Obamacare. But it's not perfect. It needs tweaking and it needs some enhancements. For instance, both Republicans and Democrats agree that the Cadillac tax needs to go away. It's been extended till 2020, but that's something that needs to be addressed immediately. Secondly, we need to make sure that we are allowing Medicare to do what the Veterans Administration does, and that's to leverage its purchasing power of pharmaceutical medicines and pass those savings on to consumers, Medicare recipients. We need to make sure that we're expanding providers. One of the challenges we have with the Affordable Care Act is that while we were able to increase people having insurance, we still have the need to increase providers. And lastly, when you consider rural areas like San Luis Obispo County, we don't have enough providers in those areas. And we don't have better reimbursement rates so that we could have more providers. So we need to make sure that we're raising the reimbursement rates for physicians in those areas. But those are the types of things we need to do. And I think the Affordable Care Act is doing a lot of good, but there's enough room for growth, there's enough room for changes, and I think we could do a lot of those in a bipartisan fashion.
So ideally, and for a long time, I've been a fan of universal health care, but there's ideal and there's reality. And I think the Affordable Care Act did approve and move forward a lot of the issues that were of concern to many of us throughout the United States. Expanding coverage for young adults and allowing them to stay on their parents' health care to an older age. Expanding the ability to move from plan to plan and have your not have pre-existing conditions. Pregnancy doesn't become a pre-existing condition, for example. But it's certainly not perfect. And I think, honestly, the root behind the part that's not perfect, which is still having to do with insurance companies that can raise their rates depending on what their experience among their pool is, and pharmaceutical companies that can just charge inordinate amount of money just for needed medication is because of those lobbies and the way money in Washington is poisoning the well amongst the lobbyists, between the lobbyists and the lawmakers. That is the core issue that we have to get a hold of in order to create any kind of expansion to care and lowering cost. And so that is really something that needs tackling. So it's not just about healthcare and expanding the quality of care, expanding access to physicians. Those are all things we want to do. But in order to do that, we have to deal with money in politics in Washington, D.C. So that is something that you have to get to the core of the issue. And then finally, just looking at how can we work together state by state and allowing state agencies, for example, our insurance commissioner here in the state of California does not have the authority that other states do in terms of vetoing when an insurance company wants to raise their rates too high. and so we should, as a member of Congress, to work with your state agencies and to work with leaders in each state to try to enable that law to get passed is really important. I think will help each and every person here in California and expand that type of philosophy and that policy throughout the country.
When I talk about reforming Congress, this is a prime example of what happens when you have partisan politics and legislation that is written behind closed doors in secret and literally is forced through the legislative process without any sort of congressional participation between either side. This legislation was one of the largest bills ever passed through Congress without bipartisan support. And I think this was part of the process that was really wrong with it. It was written in the Senate when there was a supermajority and passed over to the House side in rough draft form. You had a senator pass away while he was in service, losing the supermajority. And this is when you heard the leader of the House say, let's pass this to find out what's in it. This is a problem in Congress. If you're not doing your job and doing your due diligence, ensuring that the policies that you're making and that you're passing into law are actually as fine-tuned and as good as they are for the American people. What we have today is a lot of empty promises that were broken. You have an increased cost in premiums. People are not able to get the insurance they want. So what we need to do is allow people to access and purchase insurance across state lines to create competition, to drive down costs and provide more options for all of us to find the health insurance that we want that best fits what we need and provides us the access to the health care that is perfect for us as an individual. I think we could allow small businesses to pool their resources, which would provide more options for individuals. But what we have is what I would call the largest federal legislative boondoggle in American history because of the process and because of the politics that we see in Congress today. We need to get Congress working again. We need to have more voter participation in this regard. And that's something I will fight to do, is to get it working again for the American people. Thank you.
Things like that drive me. He wanted to pass a health care bill. There was so much resistance, and if any of you saw the secret recording, you saw the secret recording of Mitch McConnell saying, we're going to do whatever we can to stop him, we're going to vote no on every piece of legislation. So while the Republicans are up here telling you that they feel it's unfair, they have been cheated, they haven't taken part in it, no, they walked away from it. And 27 million Americans do not have health insurance today because the Republican governors have said, no, we're not going to allow federal dollars to come into our states and help people in need to have health insurance. That's nonsense. Don't give me that stuff. The healthcare system we have today is a Republican model. It was based on the Heritage Foundation's design for the state of Massachusetts. That's where it came from. And money in politics has putrefied this whole thing. And let me talk to you just about that for a second, about your social contract and why I'm connecting those two. How many of you are of age where you could go to war today? Guess what? Your social contract says that you can go to war. You could have to go to war if I tell you to, or if we decide that you have to. And you might lose your life, or be crippled, or not be able to have children anymore in your life, like many of these Iraq vets. Now, if I can send you to your death, don't I have some obligation for your welfare? That at the bottom of this is our social contract. Is it our right to have health care, or is it our privilege? And the matter of the fact is our doctors take the Hippocratic oath to say they will take care of people who are sick. What's wrong with the rest of us that we can't have that? Sure, the Affordable Care Act needs improvement. But damn it, they'll get these Republicans to get involved in this, and let's make it better. Because what we really should have is what almost every other major industrial country in the world has today, which is universal health care. Right? Single-payer health care.
And for our next question, are you in favor of overturning the 2010 Supreme Court decision, Citizens United versus the Federal Elections Commission? We'll start with you.
Oh, I love this question. Has there been any more egregious decision by our United States Supreme Court than the Citizens United decision? Probably you have to reach all the way back to the Dred Scott decision before you find something that has been more deleterious to our welfare as human beings in the United States today. Money in politics is the single biggest scourge that we have. And although I won't do it now, I will give you reports on every one of these individuals that are up here tonight and their factor of money in politics. One of the gentlemen up here has got 87.5% of his entire donations from out of the district and over $300,000 from out of the state. Now, how is that benefiting us? That means somebody else has an agenda. Now, what I've done, and I'm the only candidate up here who has signed the People's Pledge and the Democracy Pledge. What is that? That's the pledge that says I will not take corporate money. I will not take super PAC money. I'm the only person up here, except for Mr. Oceans and Mr. Isaacson, as far as I know, who has not received any PAC money, who does not take super PAC money. That's important, folks, because that tells you who they are obliged to. Moreover, I am the only candidate up here who has written legislation. This is an article in the New Times paper of San Luis Obispo, who has introduced legislation to the city of San Luis Obispo for publicly funded elections. Publicly funded elections is not going to remove the entire part of money in politics, but what it does is dilute the influence. It completely dilutes the influence. Less than 1/4% of Americans give over $200 to a campaign. Mr. Carbajal, for example, his average contribution is $1,300 between the period of April 1st and September 30th. Now, if I want to get small donations from the city of San Luis Obispo, which are like $50 donations, I've got to get about 26 of those people, where somebody else from a wealthy neighborhood can get $1,300. And I'm not trying to take issue with Mr. Carbajal, he's a nice man. But the reality is that's how money skews politics. Out of 1,799 legislative outcomes, majoritarian democracies have little to no effect.
Sure. You know, I am 100% against Citizens United. Day one when I'm elected, I will work to do everything I can to bring campaign finance reform. But the fact of the matter is we have the rules we have. And I'm very proud of the broad support. 80% of all the support comes from my district, from the 24th Congressional District. Let me tell you, I'm very proud of the grassroots support that I have. And I've always been in favor of campaign finance reform, but the rules are the rules, and we need to do everything we can to keep this seat blue.
Yes.
I think there's no question that money in politics is a serious issue. It seems to benefit political insiders and people who've been in politics and made a career out of politics. It allows them to leverage the relationships and the inside track to win elections. I think there's a lot of things that we can do to modernize this system so that there's better voter engagement in the process. We see that it's the political insiders that benefit most from the partisan politics, really frankly making people disgusted with the process to the point where they don't want to engage anymore. That's what allows the insiders to thrive, and money plays a big part in this. But with technology today, I'm out of time? All right. We'll wrap back to that later.
Oh, no, yeah, sorry.
How much time do I have left?
You have a minute 30 left.
Yeah.
Okay. I get excited about bringing technology into our system to have 21st century policies and modernizing our republic and having that engagement between citizens and their leaders, their civic leaders, or the people who are elected to serve them. You know, with an app on your phone that streamlines the social media of a candidate or a representative to potentially tracking whatever vote, the background on that vote, that allows you to better assess what it is that they're voting on so that you're not just hearing empty rhetoric, that you could hold them accountable to what it is that you elected them to do. I think there's a lot of things that can move money out of politics and create that engagement so that they don't have to spend a majority of the time, rather than showing up to hearings to raise money, to actually work and engage with you and you with them. And I think that's something that we need to do moving forward.
So yes, I have been outspoken and continue to be against Citizens United. We have to recognize this is a constitutional amendment. It can't just happen just like that. And so there's a process involved. And in the meantime, we have to do what we can to bring a spotlight onto campaign finance reform in any other way that we can. You need transparency. You need to have frequent reporting. The Senate right now, you still can't get their finance reports online. Thankfully, in the House of Representatives, you can, and having that transparency is very important. It's insane, actually, that I've had to raise as much money as I have to get the vote out, and it's still not considered enough by the establishment in Washington, D.C. to say that I'm a credible candidate. To have to raise over $500,000 and then some just to become a credible candidate from those to say you can be someone that we would even consider you winning doesn't make any sense. What matters to me is what the voters of the 24th Congressional District care about and what their issues are. And frankly, if they can, and I'm thankful for those who have given a donation to the campaign to help get that message out. That's really important. My average donation is $500. That's a lot of money for people. And that is something that you have to get a lot of broad-based support in order to get the funding that you need. It shouldn't have to be that way. You shouldn't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on campaign ads that's talking about sound bites, as opposed to doing what we can to have debates like this throughout the district frequently, and not to squash those debates because we don't have the time. This is what the campaign is about. This campaign is about the issues, talking about the issues, not about sound bites, and we got to do what we can on the federal level on down to make sure we can have access so people can really figure out who they want to represent them in Congress.
I've always been for campaign finance reform. I continue to be for campaign finance reform. Citizens United is one of the biggest travesties that has happened to our country. The Supreme Court, I think, erred in that issue. I'm very proud of the broad support. As candidates, we traverse the entire district. We engage citizens from all walks of life, from the grassroots, from everywhere. And I'm very proud that many people have stepped up to support my campaign. I think there's a lot more that can be done. The issue, Citizens United, is an overarching big issue. But it's not to say that we can't explore opportunities in Congress to bring about campaign finance reform. And that's the type of thing that I want to do when I'm your congressman, to make sure that we are doing everything possible, including promoting a constitutional amendment if the Supreme Court does not overturn this, with the likely that there's going to be a new Supreme Court in the near future. It's easy to talk about the support we've been able to achieve or not. But I'm very proud of meeting with so many people throughout the district and garnering such broad support that is evident in every which way for my campaign. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud to have UCSB campus Democrats. I'm very proud to have the California Democratic Party endorsement. The delegates, the grassroots, 83% of the vote. I'm very proud of that grassroots support that I've been able to achieve.
I'm proud to say that among my contributors, those who want to invest in my campaign, there are some who have paid $5, and that's more than they can afford to. Transparency is the issue, and if you look at my record, I've always supported it, even recently. another bill that I supported. A lot of folks talk about legislation, but that's what I do day in, day out. That you need to be transparent. Where's your money coming from? Even if you have, i.e. independent expenditure, TV advertising, it has to show on the TV screen, lower bottom on a larger scale than it used to be. Who are they? Now let me put something in a picture that take all this money out. And it's been said here that someone will not take money from corporation. In reality, we cannot take money from corporates. That's the law in the federal campaigns. But take all the money out. Who do you think would benefit? As a businessman, I can afford to do my own advertising. But if I wasn't able to, that would be a disadvantage for me, right? So talk is one thing, and who benefits the most is another thing. So you'll benefit only the wealthy people to be able to run for office and be able to get their message across. And those who cannot do, and they're worthy of that office, they'll get a disadvantage. So when we want to talk fast, we're also aware that you might be electing somebody who is really capable, a quality person, who should be running, but because they cannot get their message through, because it costs money to get your message on TV, on radio, on paper, how else you want to communicate? Look at our district, 24 district. You have 2 counties plus portion of Ventura County. How are you going to get your message across? How many debates can we have? How many forums we can go to get to everybody? Thank you.
Haven't been speaking loud enough. If you want to see money in politics, just watch what's going to happen here in this district, because I've heard different figures about the number of districts that are actually competitive in the United States, some between 8 and 14, and this is one of them, for various reasons, mostly having to do with gerrymandering, and incumbencies. Most districts are not competitive. People get reelected at a very high rate if they're incumbents, and that it's either the gerrymandering means the districts are drawn up by the legislatures, and if the legislatures are controlled by the Republicans, then the districts are going to be drawn up in favor of Republicans. So there's very few districts that are
There's nothing to rebut. He's on my side on this.
Okay. I just want to make a note to the audience that it's 8:45 now, so what we've chosen to do is ask one more audience question and then go into closing statements. It's also been requested that the candidates stay in their personal space and get their voices really out there as much as they can. So the last question, starting with Mr. Isaacson and going down to Mr. Ostrander, is what are your plans, if any, regarding the United States immigration system? Yes.
Certainly, there's a lot of talk about securing the border. Building a wall, as an engineer, that doesn't sound practical. But a secure border, you don't want people just rushing in whatever they want. And so I am for a secure border. However, the people who have been living here for years and years and have really contributed to the community here, who may still be hiding in the shadows of one way or another, we should find a path for legality for them. We really should. If they've contributed to our community, and if nothing else, if they're made legal, they have to pay taxes at that point. But I believe in securing things, but people who live here, we need to find them a path to integrate them into the rest of society, and so we can all show respect for one another. Thank you very much.
That's just a real mess, the whole immigration thing. They try and do something about it, and then the gang of 8 and all that stuff you hear in the presidential election, and then when you're out on the campuses like I've been, and you talk to people, you meet someone who's here because of the DREAM Act, and you see what it means to them, and the worries that they have that their family can be deported at any point. It's just inhumane not to do something about that. Then there's the economic aspects of it. There's work that population does, in particular the Mexican population does, that, particularly in the farms, that it needs to be done, and you can't, so you need to have some kind of a guest worker program. It just needs to be addressed in a way that's comprehensive, and until there's log jams broken up between the parties, and it's an issue of where people say, we're going to send them all back, which is ridiculous, or build a wall, which is ridiculous, and you get one of the candidates who actually worked on some comprehensive immigration, and then he's filtered for it, and we've got the other candidates, and so he has to back off and say, well, I never meant to do that, I was doing this and that. And it's just nonsense. And then, what's completely shocking is Europe. I mean, I saw a scene last night on TV where children were being tear gas at the border of Macedonia, and people are fleeing for their lives. And Europe has no answer to it. There's just, I don't know, I can't tell them what to do, but it just seems to me that it's a similar situation after World War II, where there was the United Nations set up UNRWA, which is the United Nations Refugee Relief Organization, and an area that people were taken and relocated around the world. And I think we could do something like that.
As an immigrant myself, the most valuable asset in my possession is my U.S. citizenship. Having said that, I don't believe in amnesty because I believe that this is something you have to work and earn it to know the value of it. I believe in securing our borders, but all of our borders, by air, by sea, because of all the terrorism that's been happening recently. Those who are among us already, we need to be more careful about your security and our nation's security. I believe that there are many immigrants here who got here legally, but maybe they extended their stay. Some of them are here for an honest living. Some of them want to achieve the same American dream that I achieved, and I'm all willing to help them. Those who work hard, we had the Becerra program. I think that needs to come back. We need to make their stay legal in a way that it's a permit they can use for a good, to put into good use. When they have that permit, they want to go back where they came from, to take the money back home, help their families. But because coming back to the United States is much more difficult, they choose not to do that. Then in that case, they also bring their families here because they don't want to be separated. So we got to find a way to unite the families in a legal way and show them the process and make it user-friendly for those who really want to be a U.S. citizen, go through the process. Otherwise, it is what it is. And if we say that we want to clean California, take all immigrants out of the state, our agriculture, our tourism industry will choke to death. That's the reality of it. But it's something, if you look the other way, it's not going to go away. It's a concern that we need to address it heads on, early on, before it gets any more of a problem. So we need to get to work and see that who are here for an honest living to help them just do that and live the American dream. Those who are not, especially those criminal ones, we need to get rid of them.
I too am an immigrant. I immigrated to this country when I was 5 years old. But guess what? Back then, the immigration system wasn't as broken as it is today. And the fact of the matter is that over the years, you have 11 to 12 million people who have come to this country who didn't have that opportunity because of our broken immigration system. It's a real travesty that Congress, in a bipartisan fashion, has not been able to achieve a solution to fix our broken immigration system. The Senate almost did. They actually promulgated Senate Bill 15 that actually brought about legislation in a bipartisan way that the House wasn't able to move forward. So in light of not having comprehensive immigration reform, I support the President's executive order for DACA and DAPA. I support the DREAM Act. And I also support comprehensive immigration reform to move forward once and for all. One that provides a path for citizenship. One that provides for stringent background checks to make sure that nobody who gets that benefit is a criminal. And we make sure that everybody pays taxes, and we also make sure that we secure our borders. But at the same time, we are doing everything possible to provide for fixing this broken immigration system and allowing people to come out of the shadows. People that almost every economist, every credible economist report has said that immigrants are a plus to the economy of this nation. And it's about time we fix our immigration system.
The immigration system is in shambles, and it's actually absolutely pathetic that Congress has not acted on this. And actually, there's been executives in the White House from both parties who have said this is something that needs to be addressed and have said so for a long time. It's time to get this accomplished. And there are bipartisan paths forward. And I believe that that is something that absolutely must happen in the next couple of years, because our nation's economy is in shambles in part because of it. I do agree that there needs to be a pathway to citizenship. I am concerned about issues that send up a situation where families are separated and with mass deportations. I do believe in secure borders, but it has to be done in a way that is not extreme. The thing I think is also that's been very harmful to us throughout this country is the hateful rhetoric that we're hearing on a national level. And as a member of Congress, it is incumbent upon us to call that rhetoric out when we hear it and to say that is unacceptable and to deal with the issues at hand and not to demonize people by virtue for being here and how they got here. Because there are many people here who do contribute to our society and who are law-abiding, and they should have a way to get towards the pathway to citizenship. So I think while I agree that the President Obama was in his executive right to make those executive orders, it shouldn't have happened. We should have a way to work with Congress and make this happen. We need to work with legislators in each of the districts that have borders and figure out where's our common ground, what are the things that we can work on and move things forward. And that's what I will do as your next representative.
This is a very significant issue that has festered for decades now, and there has not been a long-range solution that's been offered that has actually passed through either chamber of the House and Senate. And I think one of the main issues we have is the fact that they try to do all-encompassing omnibus bills to fix this thing. I think this is a prime example of where we could introduce a single subject rule so that every single piece of legislation that's voted on in Congress is only relative to that one topic. I hear from both Republicans and Democrats that we could agree that the first step is to secure the borders. And I think handling immigration reform and creating a legal immigration process that is merit-based and ebbs and flows with the economy is how we address this issue in the long term and have that bipartisan discussion and what best benefits our communities and the citizens within our communities moving forward. But that has to happen on a step-by-step basis, and it's necessary that we do this in the near future, because this broken immigration system is working to the detriment of all of us.
Well, the simple fact of the matter is that our immigration system is what it is because we ourselves haven't decided what we want to do with immigrants. Nearly everybody in this room is an immigrant at one point or another. And the fact of the matter is we hear this tremendous rhetoric on one side saying, oh, we got to build walls, we got to build borders, et cetera, et cetera. But the actual statistics are that there's 1 million less immigrants in this country than there were in 2010. And President Obama has deported more immigrants than any other president in history. Not only that, but Mr. Carvajal is right. The study he's talking about is actually from Harvard. And they showed that the net benefit to Americans is approximately 1% of your economic gain because immigrants are here to work for us or to work for themselves. I've been in the farming business for most of my life. I have yet to see a Caucasian out picking vegetables. I also find it sort of amazing that we never talk about the H-1B visa program. How many of you know about the H-1B visa program? I see a few people. The H-1B visa program is a government program that allows corporations to bring in head of household jobs because they say they cannot find local talent. UCLA just down the road has brought in 147 people in 2014, paying them an average of $66,000 a year as a head of household job. Now you students, these are jobs that you could have. But actually, because of our immigration policies and because we want to have it both ways, we haven't really decided. But once again, it's an issue for our social contract. Do we really believe the plaque in the Statue of Liberty that says, give us your sick, your tired, your poor, your huddled masses? Do we believe that? Or not? It's unbelievable to me that there is such hostility to children that come into this country, and we look at them as if they're criminals.
Time. All right. That's the conclusion of our questions. We are now going to go to closing statements, for which we'll have 1 minute and 30 seconds. Since we started with Mr. Isaacson for opening statements, we will start with Mr. Ostrander for the vote.
And how long do we have?
1 minute and 30 seconds.
Okay. Thank you, first of all, for coming. I hope that this was helpful to all of you. Every time I do one of these things, it helps me. Because what I want to do is I want to find the essence of these questions, not talk about ideologies. And I think tonight we moved that along just a little bit better for ourselves. I want to take one issue with something that came up about money and financing and all that. We want to make sure that we keep this seat blue. You know, the unfortunate part of that is, and I get it, it's definitely a conundrum. But the reality is that's the short term. Recently, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the Democratic head of the party, allowed lobbyists to start contributing to the Democratic Party again. You know what happens when that happens? It makes us apathetic. We say, what's the point? What does my vote matter if we can simply bring more money into it and that money has the biggest effect? That's got to change. And I see a couple of Bernie signs up here. And one of the things that I'm most impressed about Bernie Sanders is he's defied all the political logic. Because you know what? He put his trust in us. And he's got 4 million people that have given him approximately $27 on average. That's impressive. And one of my favorite cabinet secretaries was Robert Reich. And he said in his blog just a couple of weeks ago, Hillary Clinton is the best presidential candidate we have for the government that we have. But the best candidate we have for the government we want to have is Bernie Sanders. And that crystallized it for me. Because that's why I'm running. Because I want a government that, I want the government to be like we all want it to be. Not continue in the same system.
I want to thank all of you for taking the time to come here this evening to listen to the debate, to hear the different perspectives from the candidates, why they're running, what they intend to do should they have the opportunity to serve us in Washington, D.C. As I said, Congress, it's a broken institution. If we aim to solve the long-range problems that we face, regardless to whether you're Republican or Democrat, we need to reform Congress to get it working again for the American people. Over the course of the last several decades, it's literally been a partisan struggle back and forth on who controls the power and the influence in either chamber, in the House and Senate. What we need to do is reevaluate this from a systemic perspective and introduce legislation that improves it for the long run so that we can tackle the long-range issues that we face. Just had a great time traveling the Central Coast, meeting with different voters from all different backgrounds on the grassroots level, listening to people's concerns. I keep hearing the same thing from people. They're frustrated with what's happening in politics, and they want a new generation of leadership to lead us into an improved direction for our country. And I look forward to potentially earning your vote and your support through the course of this campaign. Thank you.
I too want to thank you for taking the time to be here, and I hope this is the first of many debates in this part of the district. You deserve to have the chance to talk to and listen to the candidates on a variety of issues and not just deal with sound bites that you see in newspaper articles or on TV. My name's Helene Schneider. I'm the mayor of the Santa Barbara, and I'm proud to be in an organization that has worked very well together to get things done in Washington, in Santa Barbara, and I want to work on that perspective to fight the gridlock to get that done in Washington, D.C. Working with other mayors, finding those best practices to focus on the common ground issues so we can move things forward in a way that makes sense for here on the Central Coast and on the national level. Before I was on the city council, I served at Planned Parenthood. I was their human resources director. And I believe I have the combination of experience both inside government and out in the private sector, working on issues of labor law and other things that pertains to people's day-to-day lives for an organization whose mission I think we very much hold dear in terms of access to health care and reproductive freedom. What got me started in politics started in college when I went to a class, a women's studies class, and I found out it took 75 years for women to get the vote, and how important that vote is, and to use that vote wisely and not to take it for granted. To be an activist on issues related to social equity, for environmental protection, for marriage equality, for gun violence prevention. These are things I've done for a long time, and I hope to get your vote. Thank you very much.
Well, it's great to be back here at UCSB. I want to thank Adam and Carla and the Lobby Corps for this wonderful forum and opportunity for us to share a little bit about ourselves, our visions, and why we think we are the most effective and best member to be a representative in Congress. I've shared with you a little bit about my story, growing up as an immigrant to this country, growing up in public housing, being able to enjoy and have the opportunities that this country has given me, to go to college, to work my way through college, to get student loans, to get financial aid, to serve my country in the United States Marine Corps, to know what that's like, not only struggling at the bottom end, but to know what it's like to be a middle-class family, and to know that those opportunities for middle-class families and working families have slowly been fleeting in our country. And we need to do everything possible to make sure that, as your representative, I will fight to make sure those opportunities exist for the middle class and working families, so that they could have a good college education, so that we could have comprehensive immigration reform, so that we could address climate change, so that we could produce good, high-paying jobs, so that we could save Social Security and Medicare, and so that we can address, and once and for all, stop the assault on women's reproductive rights. I'm proud to be a recipient of the Giraffe Award from Planned Parenthood for sticking my neck out and being a champion for reproductive rights for women. Those are the types of things that we need in Congress. Somebody who will work in a bipartisan way, the way I worked in Santa Barbara County, to promote many great policies.
Thank you for doing a good job, students, organizers. Thank you for putting this event together. You heard me early on say that I worked to put myself through college. I pumped gas. And later on, I owned one. And more later on, I lived the American dream. I want every one of you to have that opportunity to live the American dream. I want to be sure that college is as accessible and affordable as it was during my days. In my record, it shows that every time there was any cuts to be made to our universities, I opposed it. And every time there was money to be given to the universities, I supported it. There's no two ways about it. Your future is our future. Your success is our success. We will not, if you take the word "you" out of the word "success," we will not be able to spell success. That "you" is you, all the students here. So thank you for your effort. You like that?
Yeah. Took me a couple of seconds to think.
Being a small businessman for 38 years now, I have that private sector's experience. Having served County Board of Supervisors for 3 terms, and now Assembly 3 terms, I have the public sector experience. Ladies and gentlemen, I still have those businesses, and those are my main source of income. I don't need a job, but there's a job that needs to be done, and I have the unmatched experience to go to work the very next day and to work on your behalf. Thank you.
Well, like I said, I worked there, I've been there, and I've seen hundreds of well-meaning people come into Congress. They're going to do this, they're going to do that. Being freshmen, they get shunted off into what's called the Cannon Building, the little smaller offices. The more you're in Congress, the bigger offices you get. That's the one benefit you get from seniority. And they start feeling their way around, you know, but they've got their constituents just calling up. They've made all these promises that I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And they go, well, how am I going to do it? So they go looking for staff. How are we going to do this? Sometimes they find staff, sometimes they don't. Usually they end up having to go to a senior member of Congress and say, hey, listen, I need this for my district, can you help me out? Well, right there, you're in the pocket of that congressman. He's done that favor for you. Or you go to a lobbyist. Is another common way that people get things done. So there's and then you start learning the ropes. The federal government's a very complex thing. You know, and the way the agencies work, and the whole legislative process is very complex. And it takes a long time to learn it all and to get to the point where you can start being proactive. And you know, I would suggest that if one of the things you consider when you're looking at who you want to represent you in Congress is, do they know the system? Can they get things done for you? Are they going to be able to do it themselves, or are they going to be beholden to a lobbyist or a senior member of Congress?
Thank you all for coming, and thank you for the organization of the event. I hope you all learned things tonight. Currently I'm employed as the chief engineer at a local firm. They have me there because I can mentor other engineers, but also because I'm a problem solver. Einstein once said, solve your problems. You can't use the same thinking that you used to create them in the first place. That's very true. And I'm an out-of-the-box thinker and problem solver. I would like your vote so that I can solve the problems, but more important than that, I want you've all learned things about the candidates tonight. I want you to look at the candidates' websites, anything else you can do to learn about the candidates. I want you to compare them and see how it reflects on your values. Which one do you really think will give you the results you want? Don't listen to the money being spent. Yeah, you'll be flooded with commercials. Money makes it easier for them to get there. But you want somebody there who will work for you. Evaluate who will work for you and get the job done. And vote for that person, whether it be anybody up here or anybody else that ends up on the ballot. That applies to both June and November. Thank you.
That concludes our debate. I'd really like to thank everyone who came out. We were doing everything this happen. I'm glad to see so many people here. I'd also like to thank the candidates for coming and giving us props. Food and have a wonderful night.
No, I'm not. Not with the student newspaper. I think they're actually over here.
Are you
Matt.
with the press?
Matt is. No, I am not with the press.
Oh.
Are you with the press?
No, I work for Justin.
Oh, you work for Justin? Oh, nice.
Actually, a question. So you mentioned you're a student?
No, I'm not a
What were you
student.
part of?
No, I came here. I was invited by a student. I actually work with a candidate.
Oh, you're working with the
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I was going to ask if you don't mind, we'd love to just have extra footage.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't mind sharing it, I can give you my contact information.
Yeah.